historic poll in Zimbabwe with former President Robert Mugabe just an ordinary voter. Counting is now underway in Zimbabwe tonight.
And it all comes down to this. These three boxes carry the dreams and hopes of many here in Zimbabwe as they look forward to a new dawn and a change that they desperately need. I'm THIS Ramela in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe.
If she is innocent, as she claims, this is now a good opportunity for her to prove that. That is why you have a court system.
Meanwhile, a South African court rules former First Lady of Zimbabwe, Grace Mugabe, doesn't get diplomatic immunity in her assault case. This is eNews at 8. I'm Sally Baudet. Good evening. Well, we'll start in Zimbabwe after what has been a largely peaceful day, a historic vote for the first time in the country's democratic history without former President Robert Mugabe on the ballot paper. Polling stations closed about an hour ago and counting has begun. My colleague THIS Ramela is at one of the counting stations at the City Hall in central Bulawayo and joins us now. Good evening, Dudu. Thank you so much for joining us. Polls have closed. Any idea on voter turnout? Has it been particularly high this year, or is it too early to say?
A very good evening to you, Sally. As you can see behind us, the doors have been closed. Just one door opening for officials to maybe just get wrapped up in terms of their last minute things that they need from outside of the hall. But the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission, very strict in terms of the movement coming in and out. I can tell you that we are not allowed inside of that hall. No media at all allowed inside of that hall. It's ZEC officials as well as some party agents who are keeping a keen eye to see that that counting is fair. Back to your question on the voter turnout, to sort of give you a picture nationally in the 2013 vote, which was highly contested in this country, that saw Robert Mugabe still remaining as the president. 59% of people who had registered to
Dudu, can you still hear me? We seem to have lost your audio. Dudu, can you hear me? Unfortunately, we seem to have lost THIS Ramela. Coming to us live from Bulawayo, what we can tell you is that certainly monitors are saying that voting has largely been peaceful today. Polls are closed, counting is underway, and we have been told that election results will be expected no later than the 4th of August. Well, Tulisizwe Simelani reports from Harare on a historic day for Zimbabwe.
A highly anticipated historic vote expected to bring about change. Millions of hopeful Zimbabweans are casting their votes yet again. The enormity of the moment did not escape thousands of voters who were already queuing outside polling stations before sunrise. The country's leaders also cast their ballots at various locations. President Emmerson Mnangagwa cast his vote in Chirumanzu outside Harare. He rode to power after successfully dethroning longtime leader and former ally Robert Mugabe in a coup last year. Mnangagwa says he is happy with the peaceful process.
I'm happy that both the process for campaigning was peaceful. The voting today is peaceful. I have no doubt that the end process of the entire electoral process will remain peaceful.
His biggest challenger, MDC leader Nelson Chamisa, voted at a primary school in Kuwadzana in Harare. Chamisa is confident that he will come out victorious.
I've said that we have won this election. I'm only here to confirm that we are ready to lead, we are ready to govern, we are ready for a new Zimbabwe.
The excitement, however, was in Highfield, Harare, where former President Mugabe voted. Accompanied by his wife, Grace, Mugabe took his time in the voting booth. More than 5 million Zimbabweans registered to vote at over 10,000 polling stations that opened today. People propelled to go and vote by their hopes, dreams and aspirations and fears about this country. And yet, somehow the spotlight for a moment falling once again on the man who has for the past 4 decades come to define Zimbabwean politics. Former President Robert Mugabe coming out here to vote in Highfield, now as a civilian, marking the end of an era, but is a new Zimbabwe, a better Zimbabwe, ready to be born. Thulasizwe Simelane, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Well, we've managed to get Dudu Ramela back on the line from Bulawayo. Sorry we lost you for a moment. Dudu, just tell us a little bit more about the mood and the sense you're getting from the people. We know that previous polls, there's been a lot of fear, a lot of worries of intimidation. Do you have a sense from today, from the people you've spoken to, that people are eager for hope, that they're excited about the possibility of change? Oh dear, we do seem to be having problems with our line to Zimbabwe this evening. Well, let's stay with Zimbabwe, but move to South Africa. The country's former First Lady made headlines today as well. A South African court ruling she does not enjoy diplomatic immunity because of her husband. Now, last year, you may remember, Grace Mugabe was accused of assaulting a South African model in a Johannesburg hotel. She was granted diplomatic immunity for the alleged assault soon after, but that decision has today been overturned. So, will Grace Mugabe face the music in South Africa? Slindelo Masikani reports.
The wife of Zimbabwe's former President Robert Mugabe was accused of assaulting South African model Gabriella Engels at a hotel where 2 of her sons were staying in August 2017. Engels sustained injuries and opened a case of assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. But a week later, South Africa granted Mugabe diplomatic immunity, saying criminal prosecution against Zimbabwe's then First Lady would have serious implications for relations between the two countries. But the South Gauteng High Court doesn't agree.
It is declared that the decision of the Minister of 19 August 2017 in terms of Section 7.2 of the Diplomatic Immunities and Privileges Act 37 of 2001 to recognize Dr. Grace Mugabe's immunities and privileges as published in the Minister's Minute in the Government Gazette of 20 August 2017, number 41056, notice 850, hereinafter referred to as the decision, is inconsistent with the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa Act 108 of 1996. 2. The decision is reviewed and set aside.
The Department of International Relations says it notes the judgment and will study it further before making any further comment. AfriForum says if the National Prosecuting Authority now decides not to prosecute Mugabe, they will apply to do a private prosecution.
Hopefully she'll come here on her own free will, because if she's innocent, as she claims, this is now a good opportunity for her to prove that. That is why you have a court system. If you think you're not guilty, you need not fear. There's nothing you should fear.
Engels and her family told ENCA they're still in disbelief that the court ruled in their favor, but they're also thrilled that the wheels of justice can finally start turning. Slindelo Masikani, Johannesburg.
The past has come back to haunt apartheid-era police officer João Rodrigues. He's been charged today with the murder of activist Ahmed Timol, who died over 45 years ago. Rodrigues is the last known person to have seen Timol alive before his death in police custody in 1971. Michael Apple reports.
It was a long wait and a laboured walk to the dock. Former apartheid security branch cop João Rodrigues finds himself facing charges of murder and defeating the ends of justice. The magistrate says Rodrigues has proved that the interests of justice permit his release on bail. Additionally, the state did not oppose his application.
The applicant is 79 years old. He already knew from October 2017 that there's a possibility that he will be formally charged for the murder of Mr. Timol. He is not a young man. He handed himself over to the police after it came to his knowledge that a warrant of arrest was issued for him.
Imtiaz Kaji, the nephew of Ahmed Timol, says it's a significant day for the family to finally see somebody in the dock 47 years after his uncle's murder.
This is a significant milestone And as today we witness the formal arrest of Joao Rodriguez, our thoughts goes back to all the other families.
The National Prosecuting Authority says it's confident justice, even 47 years later, will be served.
We are willing to, go an extra mile to ensure that those who suffered atrocities during the apartheid era and those who allegedly perpetrated such atrocities faces the full might of the law.
Rodriguez will next appear in the Johannesburg High Court on the 18th of September for a pre-trial conference. Michael Apple, Johannesburg.
Well, we're nothing if not persistent. We're going to try that line to Bulawayo and Duduzile Ramela one more time. Dudu, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Sal, the joys of live television, but we do have you. As we were mentioning a little bit earlier on, the doors behind us are closed and counting is well underway. Of course, voting stations closing about an hour and 11 minutes ago, Sally. In 2013, we had 59% of people who had registered to vote turn up for that election, which was, of course, disputed because it saw Robert Mugabe remaining at the helm as president here. Now, as the race for the occupation of State House continues right now and is well underway, we do not have a clear picture in terms of the voter turnout nationally, as it is a little bit premature. We will get those details for you once those doors open in the early hours of the morning. The Zimbabwean Electoral Commission Commissioner, Mr. Dr. Qubekani Moyo, I beg your pardon, indicating to us that counting will take place and we'll only expect the first set of results to trickle in the early hours of this morning. What will happen, Sally? Let me just get out of shot and show you exactly what will happen. So the results will be posted outside of the polling station because we do know it was presidential, local, as well as parliamentary choices that we had today. So those results will be posted outside so that people do know who they voted for and whether they have won or not in this election.
Dudu, you have spent the day speaking to ordinary Zimbabweans. A little earlier we heard from Nelson Chamisa saying people want change and he's pretty confident he's going to win. Obviously Zimbabweans have been very fearful in many previous polls, but were people open about their feelings, about whether they wanted change in a different party to lead them?
That is such an interesting question, Sally. When we left Harare and speaking to people, they were very open to talk, and they would tell you exactly what they think and who they want. In Harare, mostly of the people that we spoke to saying that they want someone younger. They want definitely Nelson Chamisa, not shy to have those words come out of their mouths. But here in Bulawayo, a very different picture. When you speak to people off camera, very willing to talk to you and tell you. But when you speak to people on camera, especially the older generation, much more reserved and not willing to outright say who they are voting for, just only saying that they're desperate for a change after almost 4 decades of no progress in this country. Young people, however, in Bulawayo, more vocal, saying they want someone who can speak to their issues, someone who understands the issues of the youth, someone who can use a cell phone, an iPad, or even knows what Wi-Fi is, Sally. So where we are in Bulawayo, some reluctance to talk openly about who exactly they do want to lead the country next, but only saying they want a change.
Thank you so much. That's Duduzile Ramela coming to us live from Bulawayo. Counting is underway. And of course, remember, a president has to win 50% plus 1% of the votes. So suggestions there could be a very close call and a runoff, but we will bring you all the results as they start trickling in sometime from tomorrow. Still ahead on eNews, Gautrain commuters stranded today as workers go on strike and concerns over the possibility of load shedding this week with an Eskom wage deal still not concluded. Power supply concerns. Now, Eskom says workers disrupted coal deliveries at some of their power stations today, and they've sounded a warning that the power utility is at risk of load shedding if disruptions like these continue. Eskom spokesperson Khulu Pasiwe said coal trucks at Majuba and Duva power stations in Mpumalanga had been stopped due to acts of intimidation. Now, he said police had to be called in to calm the situation. The power utility has released a statement this afternoon saying they are urgently engaging union leaders to resolve this impasse and reach a wage agreement. To another wage deadlock, Gautrain commuters were left stranded today after workers embarked on a protected strike. Workers want a 10% increase, the employer offering 8.5%. Our reporter Lindo Kuhle has more.
The United National Transport Union is on a protected strike. Gautrain workers have downed tools following a breakdown in wage negotiations, bonuses and other employee benefits.
The offer on the table from the company is that they want the employees to self-fund their profit-sharing system, and that's not acceptable to them. And secondly is the 8.5% salary increment is across the board. It's on basic salary. It does not meet the demands of the employees. The employees work late at night till 11 o'clock. They work early morning. There's no public transport. They need to get to here either by Uber or by taxi or whatever transport they've got available.
Commuters were turned away from many stations following the shutdown. The union says the strike will continue until the company is willing to reconsider its position.
We've said to management, yes, on Saturday when we deadlocked, we're available to continue negotiations in the interest of both parties and the commuters out there. So if they call us, we'll be back at the negotiating table.
Pombela says it's offered an 8.5% increase, but workers want 10%. Workers are also demanding transport and housing allowances. Meanwhile, Gautrain has apologized to commuters and say they will try to keep their services running during peak times. Lindo Kuhle, Midrand.
Let's recap your top story this evening. A historic poll in Zimbabwe with former President Robert Mugabe just an ordinary voter this time. Counting is now underway in Zimbabwe with first results expected sometime tomorrow morning. Well, we've got your weather news coming up after the break. And then he said at the Nelson Mandela Memorial Lecture that he could dance. Well, former US President Barack Obama was doing just that at a Jay-Z concert with his family.
It was a clear and dry start to the work week over most of South Africa, and while it stays clear as we head into tomorrow for most of the country, in the far east some cloud is currently pushing in, and that extends all the way up the escarpment and low-felt areas of Limpopo, and along with that we could have some morning fog in places over that eastern high ground. But that does clear as we head into the afternoon, and at the same time in the far western parts we're going to have an onshore flow bringing cloud cover all across the west coast and slightly further inland. Along with that, a drop in temperature, and there could also be light rain in places, and we're also expecting it to be a warm but gusty afternoon into the central parts of the country. That also includes Uppington and Kimberley, where we can expect temperatures to climb to 27 and 28 degrees respectively, while further westwards it's a much cooler day, 14 as a high for Springbok. Temperatures also dropping from Vredendal through to Langebaan and Cape Town, where there is a possibility of light rain. And in the Eastern Cape, we also see an increase in temperature for this province, 25 degrees for both Somerset East and Komani. Warm weather expected for most of KwaZulu-Natal, although it will be breezy along the coastline in the afternoon. And for Mpumalanga, a bit of morning fog possible over the eastern high ground, so do take care if you're driving through those areas at first. Similar for the eastern parts of Limpopo, but by afternoon it will be mostly sunny and warm all across the province. And it's also going to be a very warm afternoon across the northwest, but cold at first as those temperatures drop into the single digits. Frosty areas expected in the early morning for the Free State, but by afternoon it gets quite warm. And a warm day lies ahead once again for Gauteng, with mostly clear skies in the province. Johannesburg and Soweto get to a wonderful 24 degrees. Let's take a look further ahead to Wednesday, and we can see that it's going to be partly cloudy and dry over just about all of South Africa. But for Cape Town, there could be a bit of rain, and it is going to be another cold day. And by Thursday, the rain spreads to the southern and east coasts of the country, while it stays sunny and warm across the Highveld, and Johannesburg gets to a spectacular 26 degrees.
And finally, imagine upstaging Beyonce and Jay-Z. Well, one couple has managed to do just that. Washington, D.C. concertgoers stopped watching Beyonce and Jay-Z perform when they realized former U.S. President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle were dancing behind them in a private box. The Obamas can be seen jamming to the concert while people below excitedly try to film them. Beyonce and Jay-Z are currently performing jointly on their international On the Run 2 tour. Well, I'm sure the couple didn't mind being upstaged by the two powerful political heavyweights. To recap your top stories, a historic poll in Zimbabwe with former President Robert Mugabe just an ordinary voter now. And this evening, counting has begun in Zimbabwe. Meanwhile, a South African court rules former First Lady Grace Mugabe doesn't get diplomatic immunity in her assault case.